What if I told you, the moment you stop reacting, you take back your life? People think not reacting means you're weak. But the Stoics knew. It's the ultimate emotional freedom. Let me show you why silence can be your greatest strength. They lied about you. They twisted your words. Now, will you fight back, or win without fighting? The loudest power isn't in shouting, it's in staying still. Here's how silent strength changes everything. What if you never defended yourself, and still came out on top? Rumors fade. Character doesn't. This is how Stoicism turns restraint into your most powerful revenge. 1. True freedom is when you're no longer controlled by other people's emotions. When you no longer react to provocation, you keep your inner power. It's not avoidance, it's freedom. Real power doesn't shout, it stays still. Have you ever had someone push your buttons on purpose? They say something subtle, or not so subtle, just to see if they can get a reaction out of you. They poke at your past, your pride, your peace, and you feel it rise up. That fire in your chest, that itch to respond, to explain, to put them in their place. But then you pause, you breathe, you realize something powerful, something most people never figure out. You don't have to react. In that moment, not reacting isn't weakness. It's not fear. It's not avoidance. It's freedom. Let me say it another way. The moment you stop letting other people's emotions control yours, you reclaim your life. That's what we're talking about today. Not just emotional control, but emotional liberation. The kind of quiet strength that can walk through noise and stay untouched. You see, we live in a world where reaction is currency. People measure power by how quickly they can get under your skin. The internet rewards outrage. Arguments explode over nothing. And if you don't react, people say you're cold, or fake, or scared. But here's what they don't understand. Not reacting isn't giving up your power. It's protecting it. Let me tell you a story. There was a man named Caleb, a small business owner in Georgia. He ran a family-owned cafe for years. Nothing fancy. Just warm coffee and even warmer service. One day, a customer came in and began loudly accusing the staff of being rude. There was no real reason, just bitterness, noise. Everyone looked to Caleb, but he didn't argue. He didn't shout. He listened calmly, then offered the man a free cup of coffee and a quiet place to sit. Later, someone asked him, "Why didn't you say anything? Why didn't you defend yourself?" Caleb just smiled and said, "When someone throws fire, you can either throw more wood, or you can let it burn out by itself." That line stuck with me, because how many times do we throw wood? How many times do we feed the fire? Not because we want to, but because we feel we have to. We let someone else's anger decide our peace. We let someone else's bitterness pollute our day. We give them that power and call it justice. But what if real justice is inner peace? What if true freedom is the ability to walk away? Not because you're weak, but because you know what's worth your energy. You see, when you stop reacting, you're not suppressing your feelings. You're owning them. You're saying, "I get to decide what enters my space. I get to choose what deserves a seat at the table of my soul." And that, my friend, is the beginning of emotional freedom. The Stoics, ancient philosophers like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, understood this well. They taught that you cannot control the actions of others, but you can always control your reaction. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius, they weren't talking about ignoring your emotions. They were talking about something deeper, emotional mastery. The ability to observe without being owned, to feel without being pulled. So how do you live like that? How do you stay steady when someone tries to shake you? Let me share a few truths, not rules, just reflections from lived experience. Your emotions are not public property. You don't owe anyone your reaction. Not everyone deserves access to your peace. Silence isn't weakness. Sometimes Silence is a message. It says, you can shout all you want. I am unmoved. You can validate your feelings without acting on them. Feel hurt, acknowledge it. Feel angry, feel it. But don't let that emotion dictate your response. Let it pass through you, not take root in you. The strongest person in the room is rarely the loudest. Strength is presence, stillness, self-respect. Let me offer one more story. A woman named Renee worked as a nurse for over 20 years. One day, a patient's family member accused her of being careless, cruel, cold. It wasn't true. Everyone on the staff knew it. But Renee didn't raise her voice. She didn't rush to defend herself. She kept doing her rounds with compassion, quiet strength, gentle presence. Later that week, the family member came back, apologized, admitted they were projecting their grief. And Renee, she smiled, forgave, moved on. That's what emotional freedom looks like. You stop letting someone else's storm flood your shoreline. You become the safe place, the steady presence, the person who doesn't need revenge, because peace is enough. And yes, this takes practice. You won't get it right every time. But every time you choose stillness over reaction, you build a kind of inner armor, a shield made of clarity, maturity, and deep self-trust. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, the next time a sharp comment, a passive-aggressive tone, or a cold shoulder comes your way, try this. Pause, breathe, ask yourself, is this mine to carry? If not, let it go. Because you're not here to be dragged into battles that cost you your joy. You're not here to be a mirror for other people's pain. You're here to be free. And freedom doesn't always look like flying. Sometimes it looks like staying still while everything else tries to shake you. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. If you've been reacting too quickly, or letting someone else's energy dominate your days, I want you to know, you can step out of that cycle. You can come back to center, and you can stay there. Remember, when you don't react, you remain free. That's not avoidance, that's power, that's peace, that's you finally in control. Stoicism teaches that you don't need revenge. You need restraint. Don't answer with anger. The right silence, born from inner strength and self-respect, is the most powerful response. Just because you're provoked doesn't mean you have to respond. There's a quiet strength in you that maybe, just maybe, the world has tried to shake. You've been insulted. You've been disrespected. Someone lied about you, twisted your words, questioned your worth, and everything in you wanted to respond, to raise your voice, to defend your name, to make sure they know they can't treat you like that. But today, I want to offer you something different, something ancient, and yet deeply needed in this modern world. A lesson from Stoicism, the philosophy of inner mastery. You don't need to retaliate. You don't need to burn bridges. You don't need to match their energy. What you need is restraint. Let me say it clearly. Self-restraint is not weakness. It's wisdom in motion. The Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca believed that our greatest power isn't in how we fight back, but in how we choose not to. Because when someone wrongs you, and you don't react with the same energy, you're not losing the battle, you're rising above it. I know, that's not easy. We live in a time where reaction is glorified. The louder you are, the more you're noticed. Clap back. Put them in their place. Don't let anyone walk over you. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. If someone can control your reaction, they control you. So the goal isn't just winning. The goal is not being moved by petty things. There's a story I love about Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who ruled one of the most powerful empires in history. He faced betrayal, criticism, and constant political games, and yet, in his personal writings, meditations, he wrote not about vengeance, but about perspective. He said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, don't become the very thing you despise. Don't answer cruelty with cruelty. Don't let someone else's weakness drag you out of your strength. Let me ask you something. Have you ever regretted staying calm? Think about it. You may have regretted yelling, texting back in anger, posting something you later deleted. But when you held your peace, when you took the high road, you walked away clean, whole, with your dignity intact. That's what I want for you. Let me tell you a true story. There was a woman named Claire, an executive at a non-profit in Seattle. She poured her heart into her work, only to find out that a colleague had been spreading lies about her to the board. It was calculated, cruel, and deeply personal. Everyone expected Claire to hit back, to expose, to fight. Instead, she said nothing. She kept doing her job, with even more excellence. She greeted her colleague in the hallway with a steady gaze and a quiet grace. She never raised her voice, never lowered her standards. Eventually, the truth surfaced, and when it did, the contrast between Claire's dignity and the other person's behavior was undeniable. She didn't need revenge. She had restraint, and it spoke volumes. You see, silence isn't always passive. Sometimes it's deeply intentional. A refusal to feed what doesn't deserve your energy. It's not about being cold. It's about knowing your worth. Because here's the thing, when you're rooted in self-respect, not everything gets a response. Let me offer you a few truths, lessons I've learned from experience, and from the teachings of the Stoics. Anger is natural, but it's not necessary. Feel the fire, but don't let it dictate your next move. As Seneca said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. You prove yourself in the storm, not by shouting back, but by standing still. Silence doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It means you chose healing over revenge. It means you chose yourself. Restraint is not suppression, it's direction. You're not bottling it up, you're channeling it into growth, into focus, into building a life so strong that no attack can derail it. Every moment of anger costs you clarity, and clarity is your true strength. When you stay clear, calm, and grounded, you stay in control of your life. Let me ask you this. What if your silence was your strength? What if your restraint was your message? What if your refusal to retaliate became your most powerful stand? Because eventually, people see. They may not notice right away, but over time, consistency reveals character, and the ones who tried to pull you down, they fade. Their noise becomes background static, and you keep rising. You keep walking with peace, with purpose, with power, the kind that doesn't need to shout. Here's one last thought. When someone attacks you, they want to feel powerful. They want to know they got under your skin. But when you look them in the eye, calm, composed, and you don't flinch, that's when they realize they never had power over you at all. You stayed centered. You stayed sovereign. You chose restraint, and in doing so, you chose freedom. Thank you for being here with me today. If you're someone who's been hurt, provoked, or wronged, I hope this message reminds you, you don't need to answer everything. You don't have to fight every fire. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not respond. Let them talk. Let them stir. Let them twist. But you stay rooted. You stay whole. Because that's what real power looks like. And as the Stoics taught, master yourself, and no one else can master you. 3. The person who hurt you is often living in the worst version of themselves. When they lose you, they're not just losing a relationship, they're losing the kindest part of themselves. Sometimes people break you because they're already broken. It's one of the hardest things to accept in this life, that the people who hurt us the most are often the ones we once loved, trusted, and gave the best of ourselves to. They didn't come into our lives with warning labels. They didn't say, one day I'll disappoint you. One day I'll wound you. They came in smiling, open arms, familiar voices, and then the shift, the silence, the betrayal. the sharpness in their voice you didn't recognize, and suddenly, you're standing in the aftermath of something you didn't cause, but you still have to carry it. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. The person who hurt you was not at their best. They were operating from a broken place, a scared place, a version of themselves they'll one day have to answer for. But you were real, you were kind, you gave something genuine, and they lost that. And that loss, whether they know it or not, is far greater than just losing you. They lost the version of themselves that was capable of being better. Let me explain. When someone chooses cruelty, betrayal, or indifference, they're not just doing damage to you, they're doing violence to their own character. They're stepping away from their better self. They're pushing down the part of them that could have grown, matured, healed, had they chosen differently. Because every time we mistreat someone who showed us love, we don't just harm them, we dim something sacred within ourselves. I once knew a man named Daniel. He had a quiet presence, one of those people who didn't speak much, but when he did, you listened. He loved a woman named Elise with everything he had, and for a while, she loved him back, or so it seemed. But over time, she began to distance herself, criticized more, gave less, until one day, without much of a conversation, she left with someone else. It crushed Daniel, but he never retaliated, never spoke poorly of her. He said, if I was the softest place she could fall, and she walked away, then she didn't just lose me, she lost the last place in herself where she could be gentle. That stuck with me, because it's true, when someone hurts you, they're also hurting the part of themselves that once responded to love, kindness, and connection. And eventually, when the anger fades, when the distractions settle, when the noise dies down, they'll feel it. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but one night, alone with their own mind, they'll remember your patience, your gentleness, the way you forgave too much and asked for too little, and they'll miss it. Not because they miss you as a possession, but because they miss who they were when they were safe with you. You see, we don't just lose people, we lose versions of ourselves that only existed in their presence. And when someone loses a connection that called them to be better, they are now left with the echo of their own worst behavior. Let me be clear, this isn't about excusing their actions. This isn't about romanticizing pain. It's about understanding something deeper, so we can heal. Because bitterness will tell you they got away with it, but wisdom will tell you they have to live with it. And they do, even if they hide it well, even if they pretend to thrive, even if they jump into something new. No one escapes the consequences of turning away from goodness. The soul keeps the score, and what we do to others, we also do to ourselves. So if someone walked away from your love, your honesty, your softness, I want you to remember this: you didn't lose, you gave, and they weren't ready. Not for love that consistent, not for care that deep, not for someone who saw them as more than just a reflection of their wounds. And if they left, or betrayed, or deceived, then they are the ones who have to live with the version of themselves who chose that. You walked forward with clarity, with dignity, with an unshakable truth. You stayed kind, you stayed open, and nothing about that was foolish. That was strength, and that strength will carry you into something real. Let me share one more story. A woman named Marianne spent 15 years in a marriage where she gave everything: support, encouragement, forgiveness. Her husband eventually had an affair and left without remorse. Everyone told her to be angry, to fight, to destroy him, but she chose a different path. She said, I was the best version of myself with him, and he couldn't meet me there. He lost more than I did. Now, years later, Marianne is remarried, peaceful, grounded, and when asked how she forgave, she simply says, I didn't want to carry someone else's wounds inside my heart. You see, The moment you realize that someone else's failure to love you is not a reflection of your worth, you begin to heal. And when you understand that they were living in the worst version of themselves when they hurt you, you begin to let go. You don't excuse, but you release. You stop holding your breath waiting for closure. You become your own closure. And that, my friend, is where your future begins. Thank you for walking through this reflection with me. If this spoke to something in you, I want you to remember, you were the kindest part of someone else's story. And if they lost you, they lost far more than they'll ever admit. But you're still here, still growing, still capable of love, and now wiser about where to give it. For, let time and character untangle everything. Rumors are temporary, character is permanent. You don't need to explain yourself, just live right, in time. People will see what's real and what's not. You don't need to rush the truth. It always finds its way home. In this noisy, fast-paced world we live in, there's one thing people seem more addicted to than ever: judgment without context. People hear a rumor, they fill in the blanks, they assume the worst, they form opinions with half the story, and even less compassion. And you're left standing there, holding your silence like a shield, wondering, should I say something? Should I explain? Should I fight back? But today, I want to tell you something that might bring your heart back to peace. You don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to fight every rumor. You just need to keep living with integrity, and let time and your character do the rest. Let me say this more clearly. Rumors are temporary. Character is permanent. They can say what they want, whisper what they want, speculate, distort, misinterpret, but they can't rewrite who you are. They can't change how you show up in the world every single day, with honesty, consistency, and grace. And over time, those who matter will see the difference. I once heard a quote that felt like a revelation. Time exposes the truth. You don't have to let that settle for a second, because when you've been misunderstood, misrepresented, even betrayed, the urge to correct the narrative is real. We want to be heard. We want to be seen. But not everyone's eyes are ready to see the truth, especially when the lie is more entertaining. And that's where your discipline comes in. I knew a man named Michael, a high school teacher in New Mexico, loved by his students, respected by his peers, until one day, an anonymous complaint surfaced. Vague accusations about his teaching style, his bias, his inappropriateness. It wasn't true, but the whispers began. The school put him on leave. His name floated through inboxes and conversations, and Michael, he said nothing to defend himself publicly. Instead, he wrote one simple line in his journal: "Let my years of character answer for me." Weeks passed. Investigations cleared him. No wrongdoing, no truth in the rumors. But what remained? His calm, his presence, his strength. The quiet kind that doesn't depend on applause or explanation. Because real character doesn't need defending. It just needs consistency. You see, when people talk about you behind your back, they're building a story based on assumption. But your life, the way you treat people, the way you work, the way you respond with grace instead of anger, that's the true narrative. And that narrative is written not in words, but in patterns. Day after day, year after year. That's what people remember. Not the drama. Not the noise, but your steadiness. Let me ask you something. Have you ever believed something about someone, only to realize later that you were wrong? Maybe you heard a rumor or a one-sided version of a story. Maybe someone planted a seed of doubt, and you made a quiet judgment, until time revealed the truth. We've all been there, and that's why it's so important to give time the space to work. Because time, partnered with character, always tells the truth better than any explanation ever could. There's a principle I live by now. Clarity takes time. Stay steady. Not everyone needs to understand you right now. Not everyone needs access to your truth. What matters is this: that you keep showing up with honesty, that your actions match your values, that you let your life, not your words, be the proof. There's a beautiful story I once heard about a woman named Teresa, a social worker in Chicago. She was falsely accused by a co-worker of misconduct, something that, if believed, could have ruined her career. but instead of going on a defensive campaign, she did something extraordinary. She stayed silent, not because she was guilty, but because she trusted time to do what words couldn't. She told her supervisor, "I've shown you who I am for 12 years. Let that be my voice." Eventually, the truth came out. The accuser recanted, and Teresa's quiet grace, it became legendary in her field. You see, truth doesn't always arrive on your schedule, but it always arrives. So if you're walking through a season right now where people are misunderstanding you, where lies are louder than your truth, I want to remind you, you don't need to shout. You don't need to fight dirty. You don't need to burn bridges. You just need to be who you've always been. Because the truth is magnetic, and over time, it draws people back to what's real. Here's what Stoicism, that ancient, grounded philosophy, teaches us. Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. That's the message. Don't argue your goodness. Live it. Let it speak for you. And let time do what it always does. Reveal everything. Heal everything. Clarify everything. Because character isn't built in crisis, it's revealed in it. So when people come for you, when your name is tossed around in half-truths and speculation, breathe. Let your peace be louder than their noise. Let your discipline be deeper than their drama. And let your life, day by day, moment by moment, speak for itself. Because what's real doesn't need to rush. Thank you for sitting with this message today. If you've been wounded by misunderstanding or shaken by unfair judgment, I hope this reminded you of your inner strength, the kind that doesn't chase approval, but stands firm in truth. Let time and character do the work. They always do. There are things in life you cannot control, how others see you, what they say, or the fairness of the world. But Stoicism reminds us, true strength lies in mastering yourself within it all. You can choose calm when misunderstood. You can choose silence when provoked. You can hold your character steady, even when no one is watching. Those who hurt you may have lost the best part of themselves, but you remain whole. And that wholeness is your greatest victory. If you're on a journey to strengthen your mind, find peace, and live true to your values, remember, you're not walking this path alone. Peace is power. Silence is strength. Live deliberately. Subscribe and join our circle of modern Stoics, where we don't just talk about philosophy. We live it together every day.